Welcome again to ADFF Stir Mumbai. I wanted to tell you a little bit about our public program, LOG, powered by JSW, in which Stir bridges people, or LOG in Hindi, and LOG's discourse to stage creative encounters between practitioners from the worlds of art, architecture, film, design, and culture. And over these past 3 days, we've seen LOGs unfold in various formats, from discussions of the sort we're just about to have today, to workshops and activations in the pavilions outside. Just this morning, we had a group reading in the pavilions. We've had urban sketchers, we've had dance performances, and we've spent a lot of time thinking about all these formats and how we can make them come together to build discourse at ADFF Stir Mumbai. So I hope you've been able to take some of that in and enjoy all of it. With that, I want to say a little bit about the panel, but since I'm also on the panel, and you're going to hear me talk about it anyway, building the contemporary, power, publics, and the new Indian institutions, I'm going to invite our 5 speakers on stage: Tasneem Zakaria Mehta, Martha Thorne, Bose Krishnamachari, Raj Rewal, 4 speakers, and I'm the moderator. So with that, could we please have them on stage, and we can get right into it. They're coming. Anywhere, you can go ahead. Anywhere is fine. This is my chair. You can. Yes. Okay. Okay. I have a timer going off, and I know we have very, very strict deadlines because there's a film screening happening at 5:30, so we're going to try and stay on time. I'm going to get right to it. Cultural institutions have never been neutral. They've always played a role in shaping how knowledge, value, and taste are defined, deciding what is preserved, what is celebrated, and also what quietly disappears from view. India is going to be 79 years old this year, and so technically we're still a very young country. And some of the people on this panel have seen this country come into being. So one of the things we're talking about today is, how does one imagine a nation into being through its architecture? On this panel, we have people who've engaged with institutional structures of various shades, designing, building, and restoring key public buildings, or imagining temporally finite universes in the Biennale or award format. One of the reasons we're doing this panel here at ADFF Stir Mumbai is to reflect on the surge of institution building that we're seeing across South Asia right now. This happens in the form of museums, cultural platforms, festivals, awards, and also practice-led spaces. And this has come up in several panels at ADFF Stir that, in a country of 1 billion people, the responsibility of the state in terms of providing services and patronage is often shared with private bodies. And culture is one of the sectors where we are seeing this infusion of investment, both in terms of resources, private resources, and interest. This is also enabled by structures like India's CSR, or Corporate Social Responsibility Law. The scrambled nature of this investment, though, means that the physical infrastructure required to hold it doesn't always keep up with the intellectual and creative investment of people in the sector. And that puts structures like biennales and awards in a generative but also resource crunch space, where their impact is maximized by and held up by a small amount of funding and resources, but also a huge amount of collective labor. So what does the emotional labor of holding up an institution look like? And who does that? Who sustains its image in the absence of infrastructure, in the absence of nuts and bolts? As creative practice becomes more fluid and interdisciplinary, institutions are spaces where publics are actively produced, where authority is negotiated, and where ideas of the future begin to take shape. What does institutional power look like today? And just as importantly, how are institutions choosing to use it? Those are some of the questions we're going to open up today. With that, I'm going to get right to it. My first question is to you, Raj. Your work has consistently engaged with architecture, not just as a civic act and not just as a purely formal one. And when you look at Indian institutions today, how well do you think our buildings actually serve the idea of the public, not just administratively, but also experientially?
In response to your question, I would say I had the opportunity to design one museum, almost one of my last works in Punjab. It was called Jang-e-Azadi, Freedom Struggle Museum, and it was in a place that's a little bit outside the city of Jalandhar, not very central. So I had to concern, to create a space which was almost to take an inspiration from, let's say, the old temple structures of Punjab, let's say the Amritsar temple or Madurai temple, which is not only a temple, but it's also public space where people go on weekends, or is the central space of the city where they can sort of discuss, hopefully, the values which are within the museum, which were for the freedom struggle, and about democracy. And now that the democracy is being undermined, not only in our countries, but in other places also, it becomes very important that these places become not only a place for just going to see what happened 200 years ago or 100 years ago, but what is happening today. Because often the televisions channels are bought over. There's a whole lot of things which are happening which are under a certain kind of a threat. So can our public buildings, museums, become the centers of not only disseminating art, culture, but also interwoven with current values of freedom of speech and values which are concerned, which allows arts and culture to be fostered, to become points of discussion. It has to be said that the sort of, let's say, paintings, in fact, when you did the Biennale, it was a very political event also, in a way. And I was very grateful to see the museum designed by Madam Zakaria and to renovate it in a place that not only brought back what was there in the beginning, but it's also contemporary events can take place there. So I think they have to, whatever places which we are designing now have to address the events which are happening today.
Thank you. That actually the question comes quite naturally, comes to you. The Dr. Bhau Daji Lad Museum is the erstwhile Victoria and Albert Museum. And when it was revived in the early 2000s, a revival you spearheaded, what was it aspiring to become for contemporary Bombay? And how did you, in the midst of negotiating all these tensions between what an institution might want, what a public might want. How did you translate those aspirations into institutional action?
So, is this on?
Yes.
Yes, now it can be. So thank you, Samantha, and thank you to STIR and all the people who've organized it. This is a wonderful festival, a wonderful initiative, and thank you for inviting me to participate and share our work with all of you. So for those of you who don't know, and I have to say the light is in my eyes, so I can't see many of you, but for those of you who don't know the Bhau Daji Lad Museum, which is the erstwhile Victoria and Albert Museum, it was established in 1857. It's the oldest museum in Mumbai. And it was established with an encyclopedic vision. And the building is really built at the height of the arts and crafts movement. And so that's what it's all about. It's probably one of the most beautiful museum buildings in the world. And so when we found it, I found it, and I was head of INTAC at that time, I was just appalled at its state of degradation. And we were looking to set up a conservation lab for Mumbai. And that's really how we came to the project. And in the initial stages, it was just that the building and the objects were crying for attention. So that was the approach. But as I did my PhD work on colonial institutions, and as I did a lot of research, I realized that so much of it is the story of Bombay. It's not only the story of craftsmanship in India, but it's also the story of Bombay. And so that's slowly what began. It took 5 years to do the restoration, and we won UNESCO's highest award for cultural conservation, the Award of Excellence. But it was really a work in progress. We kept pushing the goalpost. You know, when you work with the government, if you go with a mega project that says we're going to do everything under the sun, the government will probably get scared. So we did it, you know, sort of little bit at a time, proved ourselves, then the next stage, then the next stage. But the vision was always to make it a community space and to bring the artist back to center stage. During the colonial period, the artist was never included and invited into hallowed spaces like museums, because, I mean, and when I say artist, I mean, Indian artists in particular, because Indian artists were just not considered by the colonial government or the colonial powers or the colonial intellectuals, you think of John Ruskin and others, to be intellectual enough to have the intellectual refinement to produce great art. So Indian artists were never included in the museum. Neither were Indian craftsmen acknowledged. So our collections didn't have the names of these wonderful master craftsmen. They truly were master craftsmen who created these objects. We had to do immense amount of research and, you know, sort of looking, is this the same, this is the same, this must be the atelier where it is produced. And so doing that sort of research. So the intention was very much to bring back the artist to center stage, the Indian artist, and to foreground also craftsmanship. But in the process of bringing back the artist, it was also to deconstruct the colonial intentions, the colonial perspective with which this museum was created and presented. So the artists then are invited to interrogate the collection, interrogate the archives, and create a response. So the idea is not to be didactic, but to be engaging. And so that really was the vision. But that evolved over time. And so our first exhibition we opened in 2008 after the restoration, which started in 2003. 2010 was our first exhibition. And we've been on a roll since then. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to come back to you on that, on what decolonizing a museum looks like. I turn to Martha. The Pritzker Prize, which you were the former executive director of, has become one of the most influential platforms through which architectural work is seen, remembered, and valued globally. So how does a prize of that magnitude shape what kinds of practices come into view, particularly across different geographies and contexts? Could you share a few examples?
Thank you very much. And I have to say, your museum is so inspiring. And Raj, what you said about a place having more than one purpose and to be able to have culture from many different people but go beyond that is really also inspiring. Thank you for the question about the Pritzker Architecture Prize. I think when we look at awards, as I mentioned in the opening, I think we have to use a critical eye and ask what is the purpose? And does the prize ring true? And does the prize follow through on the purpose in everything they do? The financing of the prize, the jury, the publicity that's given, the nominations process, etc. And I think in the case of the Pritzker, because it was started so long ago, it has sort of a privileged position. We can look at the evolution of the prize over the years and see that at some times the prize is a leader and it has a very strong message that it wishes to communicate to architects and to the public. And other times we can see that the prize is a follower and that it echoes what it hears from society, from architects, communities, etc. I think some of the key elements to a prize are looking at the jury, if it is a juried prize, looking at the objectives that are stated, looking behind those objectives. If I speak in the case of the Pritzker, it was established to communicate architecture, to bring dialogue, debate to a larger public. Some of the good things have to do that the jury is not made up just of architects, and the jury does not change every year. The minimum is a 3-year tenure for each person, and they could be there longer. The jury each person represents himself or herself. They come from different professions, curatorial, writing, practicing architects, politics, museum directors, business people. So they represent a spectrum of voices, and I think that this is positive. They also have to come back every year and face their decisions. Sometimes on juries, if we make a quick decision and we don't have any investment long term, maybe the jury is not so serious. So those are good things about it. If I had to have a critical point of view, I think that the difficulty is that juries in general reflect themselves. It's easier to find someone in the list of nominations who has something in common with an individual on the jury. And it could be nationality, it could be size of office, it could be type of architecture, it could be many things. So I think we have to be careful when we look at the jury. In my experience, I think over my 16 years with the prize, the jury tried to look more and more at broader contexts. If you look at where the jury comes from, they had a lot of difficulty. We had a lot of difficulty knowing what was going on in the countries of Africa. That's partly because of communication, it's partly because of information, it's partly because it's so distant from the context which many of the jury members lived in. On the other hand, there was a sensitivity, and I think that there is. If I had to give 2 examples where I think this increased sensitivity is echoed, I would say the year that perhaps Shigeru Ban won the Architecture Award. And he won it not just for the quality of his ideas, the creativity, but as the Pritzker is for the art of architecture and service to humanity, the jury citation spoke a lot about his temporary housing, his disaster relief that he provided for victims of human-made disasters, but also natural disasters. So I think that message was clearer, and I think that's one example. A second example where the message was clear for many people, the profession and public alike, I would say was in 21, my last year, when the French architects Lacatoni Vassal won the award. Their architecture is clearly the art of architecture as traditionally understood, but also they were able to convince clients not to tear down buildings, not to change a park, but just to improve things, thinking about how the communities lived in those buildings or wanted to live, what they really needed, or how they used a park. And they were very brave in going against the clients, but I think that those are two examples where an award can go beyond the award itself and have a message that speaks to a broader public. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. I want to start by congratulating you, Bose, on another successful edition of the Kochi Biennale. The Kochi Biennale is an artist-led platform, and it functions as an institution, rather like the Pritzker Architecture Prize, without necessarily having the physical form or infrastructure of one. What kinds of risks, responsibilities, and forms of cultural labor come with holding that kind of space over time, especially when the institution is so deeply enmeshed in a living city?
Good evening. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this amazing people midst of them. And I would like to congratulate ADFF, STIR, and my good friend Amit and Samtha and Ranjana. Thank you. All the teamwork. It's not easy to put up a festival like this. And Kochi Muziris Biennale was ideated by artists. Initially run by artists, curated by artists. The difference in between any other organization, foundations or biennales are run by administrators or organizations which is government run or something or the other, bureaucratic in a way. So we take freedom. Artist takes freedom, and artists who understand the possibilities of practices of the other, whether it is artists or architecture or design, everything comes to it. And when we look at contemporary practice, it's a kind of amalgamation of all kinds of visual reading, visual practices. I just want to say that it is not easy to set up a festival. And this ideas originated when then Culture and Education Minister of Kerala had visited Mumbai. Over a conversation, he said, what is the best thing can be offered to the state of Kerala? The culture minister, his name is M.A. Baby, and he was also education minister. And it was great to have the support from the left-run government at that time, and we continuously supported by any government come. The government is the first funder for the Biennale. And there is when I look at the Biennale is a temporary museum project or a temporary, we create in a way a temporary university in some ways for learning. And Biennale Foundation also got many verticals. It's not just the Biennale, we do it For us, the Benali content, there are other verticals like students Benali, ABC, art by children, then residency program, invitations program, and then these verticals also needs to have added value to it. And also what is important when you create a Benali or a Trinali. In fact, we used to have the first Trinali in India, which was started in 1968, initiated by Lalkala Academy, Central Lalkala Academy. Unfortunately, it fell apart in 2003 or something like that. Last edition was happened. There many people tried to initiate a biennial in Delhi, but unfortunately, the government never supported. What is important is to understand the ground where you are putting the seed. We were lucky to have a soil where we have multiculturalism. Nearly 44 different kind of community lives very close to around 4.5 square kilometer area, and also nearly 16 languages people speak. The location also got, when you can say, an ideal because it's secular in many manners. Diversity is accepted by the soil. That is one of the most important aspects. And also we learned it from other biennials how not to do shows or how not to do it. For example, I was attending a biennial professional preview day, I don't want to mention the name, in front of the museum and location. There were kids who were playing. So for the curiosity reason, I just went up to them and I asked what is happening here. There are, it seems like there is some celebration or something. Unfortunately, none of these kids were not at all aware of what is happening next door to their home. So it is very, very important to, when we started the biennial, nobody knew what is this Benali means, and the word means, or what is it. Nobody knew in Kerala or nationally also not really discussed these things. So in a way that what is important is to understand the public, and if you don't get the first touch from the local, you have failed to make it happen. It's Kochi's success is actually, I think, we could encourage or live with the neighbor, live with a kind of friendly manner. And like a huge support come from the art community, artist community, as well as other creative community from all around India. There's not just from Kerala. And I had, Tasneem Mehta was actually one of the trustee and also now advisor to the Benal Foundation. We have an incredible team of people working. That is why we could make it sustain and make it and people friendly. It is known as People's Biennial. Thank you.
Thank you. I am going to draw on two things you mentioned, public-private partnerships and also location, which brings me back to Tasneem. Your museum is located right next to the zoo, and that puts it in a very interesting position in how people negotiate social and cultural capital in their interactions with the institution. So in your experience, what does it take for an institution to earn public trust, especially from communities who may not see themselves reflected inside it?
So also just to address your point about public-private partnerships,
yes.
We were the first cultural project to have a public-private partnership in India, and many other trusts or groups have approached us to say, can we look at your template? How did you do it? And it's a challenge. It's a very big challenge because you have to manage so many constituencies, but it has worked. We are still here. In terms of engaging public trust or creating public trust, it is really how you address the community. And you have to address the community as an equal. You have to address the community without bias or prejudice. And I think that has been the fundamental premise with which we have operated. We have massive amount of programming. I think we probably are the museum, even if I say so, that does the most amount of programming. In our earlier days, we were doing programs every single day. Now we have, sort of curtailed that a little bit. But we have schools coming in, we have education programs. We had a very successful course on modern and contemporary art, because what we found is in a city like Mumbai, there was not a course on modern and contemporary art. And this is where modern was born. And so we started that. We had that for 10 years till COVID happened, and then we had to close it. But we had a phenomenal response. We got 25 students a year, and we ran it on weekends. It was for adults. So we do a lot of things like that to engage the community. A lot of lectures, a lot of seminars, and a lot of family workshops. So the idea is to bring people in and make them feel that this is their museum. So we have a book just at the entrance, or where you are exiting, and we invite people to write comments and what do they feel and how they would like us to improve. And invariably, it is just, even if I say so myself, it's just, there is so much love and so much appreciation. And so, touch wood, we have been very fortunate, and I think it really is our deep desire to engage the public. We have trained all our boys and our security staff who man the museum, told them they have to be very polite. We do tests with them. We have a little award we give them every month. So we take one area of the museum and we train them to speak in Marathi because a lot of the public speaks in Marathi, to be able to explain, because they want to know, sometimes our curators are not around, that you engage with the public, you tell them. And they are very proud to do that, because they realize they're, playing a kind of educational role. So we do these sort of little things to make them feel proud, not just that they're standing there just staring into space, but that they should also be able to participate. And I think it is small initiatives. Comfort of the visitor is very important. So we've started a cafe. We have a lovely little cafe at the back. It's very meager at the moment, but it serves its purpose. And then during the weekends, we have a more elaborate fair. We have a shop to carry back things of that to engage the public. So I think it is. Make the visitor feel that they are important. And that's fundamentally how you create trust. You give the impression that you care.
Thank you. So cultivating a sense of ownership.
Sorry?
Cultivating a sense of ownership in
yes,
a way.
Absolutely.
And that brings me to you, Raj, and something you just said about a place having many purposes. Many of your buildings were designed with a long civic life in mind, expecting change, reuse, and public negotiation over time. And I'm thinking about this, a couple of things from your practice, both your use of stone and the structures that are inherently brutalist, but also sensitive to the people who live in them, the people who move through them, and in all these enclosures and gathering spaces that you create. So how important is durability to you when you create these institutions, both material durability and social durability, to the life of the institution as well, let's say?
I'm digressing a little bit, if you would permit.
Yes.
I've just been to the Kochi Biennale and also the museum which you have created. So some comments on that. I think the great thing about the Kochi Biennale is not only the objects within the Biennale, but the people who are viewing it.
Absolutely.
It was amazing to see very simple people, if I may use the word, or people who were just what you see in the bazaar or in the crowd, going through the all sorts of art objects. I don't know what their inner thoughts were about it. This sort of people, let's say girl in a niqab who's never been probably to an art gallery, but watching, let's say, a very avant-garde material in a gallery. So I think that's a wonderful thing about the Kochi Biennale, because it integrates the general public, I think, which has never happened, as far as I know, within our country or even outside, as far as I know. The second thing about your museum, if I may make a comment, I was absolutely stunned, I must say. It was a great joy to see it, because it brought back what was done maybe 1857 or something like that, and brought to life again. Because I think we are a country which has a lot of things coming from the past, but which can they be brought to life today. I was just thinking of Ellora, Ajanta, let's say. If an event could be happened in Ellora, the whole world would come to see it. Because Ellora is a fantastic space, and it has not been utilized in the contemporary idiom. I mean, I've seen the Chinese versions of Ajanta. I have spent 3.5 years in China building in Beijing, and I went to see all the major architectural traditional buildings which they have done, which are, let us say, quite honestly spin-off from the Indian buildings. Indian traditional Buddhist architecture is replicated in China and looked after much better than what we are doing today, and that is by a communist regime. So it was wonderful to see it, and also how the Chinese react to it. I had never thought the Chinese would sort of Marxist, would they come to pray in it or something, but they have given it another life, so to speak. I think we should consider events like what you are doing in your museum or your Biennale. I think this is a beginning of it, that we should be able to reinterpret what was in our historical tradition. I mean, it's hard to think of it. I've just done a book on traditional Indian architecture, and I thought that book is done basically on secular building, but I think the religious building should be reinterpreted in terms of contemporary culture, from cultural point of view. I mean, imagine the Jama Masjid of Delhi, which is a fantastic space with red sandstone all around. I mean, it is made for a certain faith and certain values, but it can be considered from a secular point of view. If you go, I'm deeply touched by how it is being done. Similarly, let's say the temple, Chola temple, Ganga, I can't even pronounce it properly, but once you go in, it's an amazing experience. There's nothing like that anywhere in the world, the experience. Now, I'm not a religious person, I must say that, but I'm deeply moved and touched by it. Its sculpture, its architectural, its spaces, organization of values within it. So I think we are one of the few countries in the world, besides maybe Italy, which has great historical legacy, which needs to be reconsidered from another point of view, from rather a rigid religious concern to from a more democratic secular values. And I think this is the sort of job both of you are doing in a way, and I'm very deeply touched to see that.
Thank you. Thank you for that perspective. I'm very happy I'm very happy that all of you represent very different kinds of institutional structures, and the work that each of you does on a daily basis, all of us in the room have so much to learn from it. So thank you for that. Martha, coming back to you. Definitely we're seeing a time where global institutions and prizes increasingly speak about ethics, climate, and social impact. And I'm not referring to any prize in particular here, but generally. From your perspective, what responsibilities come with that influence? And where do you think global architectural institutions still fall short in responding to the realities of local publics? I know that you spoke about it briefly in your first response, but it would be great to hear more.
I think that you're absolutely right, that architecture is a profession that is asked to respond to many tensions, whether it's within the profession, such as technology, or from outside to deal with sustainability, climate change, equality, social values, things like that. I think this is particularly hard for awards to do because many times they say it's an award for sustainability, but then you look at who is sponsoring it, and maybe it's not a company that has sustainability values, or maybe it's not an organization that has been clear in their definition of what sustainability is. So what I would say about awards that try to look at other values, on one hand, I applaud them because I think the world is changing. I think architecture is ultimately political. It has a point of view. Every building has a point of view. Every firm, every architect has a point of view. And the only thing I think is that awards or organizations, they must measure to see if they are actually achieving what they've said they want to achieve. It's very easy to say, well, I'm very sustainable. But then when you start to look at the practice or the award or the institution, and you say, but this doesn't make sense. I think it's transparency, accountability, and I think it's measuring after the fact, just as architects do post-occupational studies to find out if their library, if their museum, if their housing is being used fully in the way that they had hoped, or is it working in the way they hoped? Have there been changes? What can they learn? I think awards need to look carefully at themselves, evaluate, and then try to improve and be very transparent about their strengths and weaknesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Bose, I have one more question for you, after which we will begin the audience Q&A. The Kochi Biennale over time has accumulated visibility, expectation, authority, but it's also a very dispersed form of authorship where you have a different curator coming in every edition. So in a way, the question is to be or not to be. You have institutional memory and history, but you also need to resist becoming a bureaucracy. So what does that tension look like, and what does it feel like to operate within it?
Yeah, thank you. It's really a good question to, think about it. I believe that we have opened our first edition of the Biennale on 12/12/12, and it's now the 6th edition is running until 31st of March 2026. So I would like to take this opportunity to invite all of you to come and check it out. I know some of you going to Kochi from here. So coming back to your thinking, we have a fantastic newly developed or structured organization for the next couple of editions. We have, in a way, we could give some kind of confidence to the public as well as the organization, that huge support coming from mentors. We call it benefactors, which 1 CR annual contribution for 5 years, coming from 7 to 8 people. It's a committed thing. And also the biennial for the present Biennale, there are few others also committed financial. It's also, I believe that, the patronage coming from galleries. That's what I said, it's from all around India. There is a kind of interest why Biennale needs to be supported. And the site for learning been encouraged by not only the state, but also the people of different region. I'm also to maybe Tasneem, you could add to it. I'm sorry, I'm not a moderator,
No,
but
not
I
at
think Tasneem could talk about how she's part of it. Maybe it'd be nice to.
Yes, thank you, Bose. I was a founding trustee, and I continue to be an advisor, and I've been very involved with the Biennale. And I think it's a very good question. How do you have the infrastructure, and the KBF Foundation is very strong. As Bose said, there are several donors who have contributed, which is an act of faith and an act of confidence, which is very important. And it's the only place where you have this sort of vibrant contemporary art that is critical, that is unabashed, and it's coming from across the world as well as Indians. And as Bose said, it covers a whole spectrum. It's from students to young children to experienced artists, and so that is very important. So it's engaging the community, and but at the same time, it has a very specific life for a period of 4 months, and so then it's sort of, you're working towards the next edition. We have considered, perhaps doing an architecture biennale in the interim period, which I hope will happen, Bose. And I've been very keen on that right from the beginning. But we have to see how that works, architecture and design, so that you keep the momentum going and you keep the engagement of the community. So you have to be fairly nimble. It's not an institution, but it is simulating an institution in a sense during its life. So it is a huge challenge in a sense. It doesn't have what I have, which is to deal with a permanent infrastructure and a permanent building, which is a heritage building, which is very sensitive and fragile, and that has its own compulsions. So it's an interesting model, but because it engages the whole city in a certain way, in a way that we, as a standing institution, can't quite do. It's a kind of sister institution in a sense. Yeah.
Thank you for that. We must open this to the audience now, but if we have time, we will come back to each of you again. Questions, people? Yes, I see a hand raised in the back.
Hi. So, as an architect, when we design for spaces like a biennale or a museum, and even when the country is bidding for Commonwealth and Olympics, we are creating more public spaces. So, while doing those, how do we actually prioritize or see the stakeholders while designing for the public? And as well as whether it's the power or the public itself or the institution or economy or the finances we are spending on that, how do we actually prioritize these stakeholders?
Would you like to address that to a specific panelist?
I would actually address it to Tasneem ma'am and Raj sir, so if they could actually handle that.
Would you like to speak?
I think the kind of events which happen in the Biennale, I mean, have to be supported by certain kind of public funding. I don't know where the money comes from, but the enthusiasm of the, let's say, the local municipalities, mayors, the city itself becomes alive when there is a Biennale. So I think basically, let's say, I suppose you can talk more about it, that in Kerala, is the whole, probably the entire government probably participate beside the artists who participate, because it's a lot of money coming from elsewhere, how they all handle it. I can only talk about the one project in Punjab which I've done. The money basically came from the Punjab government because they were feeling that the Punjabis have done so much for the freedom struggle, but they are not ever sort of Bhagat Singh and other people who gave their lives. In Punjab, there is a feeling that the rest of India was doing the petitions, so to speak, like Mahatma Gandhi and others. They were doing petitions to the British, but we gave our lives. So something should be done about it. So it is actually essentially the cultural part of the Punjab government paid the money, so to speak, to build the museum. And also, I feel perhaps it would have done much better if they had a privatization to come into it and to make it a bit more broad-based, because some of the interiors and all that are still not done because there's not enough money. So I think I am also intrigued by how to get the money from different sources to make these places, museums, biennales, and your museums alive for the general public.
The public trust building is one of the most important aspects. When we look at biennials or triennales or document how much money they spend for each edition. For example, last edition document that takes place every 5 years in Germany, in Kassel, spent about 40 million euro. And Kochi Muziris Biennale spent 32 crore. This edition's budget is 32 crore. This is supported by individuals, patrons, galleries, artists, government. Government is the first supporter. Tata Trust is one of our key supporter. And that is for two more editions. They committed 3 crore each. So it's these kind of trust is built by time. It will take, and also to your the earlier questions, that each edition is curated by different minds, different people. That is also great, that you get to see different vision from around the world. It is an international project. It gives you international thinking as well as practice. Both comes to the land. That is what the Triennale has done to us. When we were looking for some original art practices, we never had the opportunity, which are given in Triennale. But now we have biennales. We should have more and more biennales in India and international platforms. So, and culture, economy, cultural support, these are all larger subjects, Actually, we can talk more and more on this. Thank you.
So I'll just say that I think it shouldn't fall on the architect to be balancing the stakeholders. Really, the project lead should be doing that, the head of the project, whoever's spearheading, whoever, because they have to, it is walking a tightrope, but you have to manage the different constituencies. So that is what I did. I was doing the fundraising. I was also, as it happened in this case, because I have a design background from JJ School of Art, so I was involved, and I did the design. The conservation architect worked on the building, but I did the entire interior design and the entire layout of the museum and the curation. But that's an unusual case. But it shouldn't fall on the architect to manage all these stakeholders. I think the architect has to bring a certain vision, a certain understanding, and really do the research well. And then convince, once you've convinced a project lead, then it is up to the project lead to be able to convince the other stakeholders. I mean, that's been my view of the whole thing. Otherwise, you won't be able to do your job. You'll spend a lot of time doing, managing the politics behind it.
Thank you. I think we can take one or two more questions. Yes.
Hello, Tasneem and Bose. I'd like to draw attention on what Mr. Raj spoke about Ajanta Ellora, and how does one really open up this kind of a very special place, which is not only, it's like sculpture, it is sacred, and it has a visibility from people traveling from all over the world to really engage with showing contemporary works of art and architecture, or engage with like a dialogue, or just besides coming there and just seeing the cave.
And the best example may be Bilbao effect, just a position of contemporary with the Frank Gehry building, actually given life to that. They spend about 800 million euro to develop that museum, connecting to the historic part and also to the contemporary, modernist part of the land in Bilbao. And when, any museums, when you look at the Metropolitan Museum or Bhau Daji Lad Museum, why it is sustaining or, making it more and more temporary project in a permanent space. If you bring it, more ideas, more different kinds of vision, bring into sites, can be the temporality of projects. Temporal project could be included in such places, Ellora or wherever site. I think, a curatorially done project can, really give life to that site, also give more meaning to that site.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I've seen it in Bhau Daji Lad Museum or other museum spaces. They're thinking differently. Permanent places thinking differently now. Thank you.
So I just want to say that before working on Bhau Daji Lad, I worked on Elephanta, which is really a part of the whole cave architecture of Maharashtra, an incredible site. And we did a festival there to do some fundraising, because there was a custodian's cottage which had broken down, and I wanted to convert it into a site museum, and it was converted into a site museum. And we had an auction, and we restored the site. We worked with UNESCO. So that was prior to coming to the Bhau Daji Lad. And the festival we had Shubha Mudgal singing and Alan Malvalli dancing. And so that but it was a one-off. I mean, they have the Elephanta Festival, but they've created some hideous replica which is at a lower level. You have to have it at the site. You have to light up the site. We did the site. It has to be done with a certain sensitivity and, of course, respecting the concerns of the site. But Mr. Rewal is absolutely right that we must bring that kind of conjugation, a kind of a coming together of contemporary, could be even classical culture in the contemporary that is responding to the site, But also, as Bose says, why can't we have a festival, a contemporary festival at Elephanta with artists responding? I had wanted to do that, but it was too preliminary 20 years ago. Maybe now the government might consider it, because now, of course, there's a different understanding also of art and a different appreciation of art. There has been a change, I think, with the Biennale, with the museums. There's a different understanding today from what it was 20, 25 years ago. So I think we may be at an inflection point. Hopefully, as you say, Mr. Rewal, that might happen. You know, we need to get the government to think differently about cultural sites. So that's one very important thing I wanted to say. 99% of museums in India are run by bureaucrats. They are more interested in the hardware. They're interested in the building. Does the building look good? They're not interested in the software. And having worked with the government for a long time, I know that. And so to get them to rewire their way of thinking and think software, think of how you can bring in the artist, bring in the cultural practitioner, engage with the people on the ground, it requires a different thinking. So we need experts to come in and do this kind of thing. And so that means that the government has to retreat from this hegemonic position that they have in culture. And I've been saying this for a long time, but you know.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm afraid we have to wrap up there, but I'm sure our panelists will be around to speak to. I just wanted to say that between all four of you, you've really given us a sense of institutions as almost mycelial structures. You know, they're concrete and they're material, but they're also human, and there is life within them, and it's important to remember the software, the life within them. And I have a question that actually draws on what Tasneem was saying, which I'm going to leave you with and leave all of us with. When we imagine institutions now, we also, what do we need to give up? What do we need to unlearn in order to imagine institutions in ways that are meaningful for the publics we're building them for? So with that, I'm going to close. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And thank you, Raj, Bose, Martha, and Tasneem.